Good evening, everybody. Super Jackster01 here. I also want to wish you all a very happy New Year's Eve, as today is New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2024, our very last day of 2024. Yeah, can you believe 2024 is already over? Jeez. I remember the first day of 2024 like it was a couple of hours ago. Anyway, now we're in for a big video. It is time to do my top 20 favorite movies of 2024. This is very similar to what I did last year, top 20 favorite videos of 2023, although the video came out in January of 2024. But this time I got it done for New Year's Eve, so I hope you guys enjoyed. This will be the same way as like last year, doing it in like a ranking, showing footage and stuff like that. But for the fun of it, I actually added transition, like your audio for the transition, showing the numbers. You'll see what I mean. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this ranking. So let's start with number 20.
Frankenstein! Did we just fall for the old Frankenstein trick?
Lisa Frankenstein is probably not a film that you expected to end up on this list. I didn't expect it either, but man, I really enjoyed this movie a lot more than I was expecting. From the trailers, it looked like it was going to be one of those romantic comedy thrillers, but it was actually quite different than that. It's honestly a hilarious riot with a lot of batshit insane scenes. Catherine Newton is great as she always is in roles like this. I really liked her performance as Lisa and seeing her still trying to deal with the loss of her mother, but I think the main standout performance is Cole Sprouse as the creature. It's practically a pantomime performance, but he's great in it. He doesn't say a single word of English throughout the entire film, but you're able to understand what he's thinking and or saying if he could speak English. That's not an easy task to pull off, and he does it perfectly. But my favorite character in the film would have to be Lisa's stepsister, Taffy. They could have easily done the usual stereotype of the step-sibling being antagonistic towards the protagonist, but they actually do the exact opposite, where Taffy is just an absolute sweetheart who is very supportive of Lisa, wants to be best friends with her, is always there for her, and wants her to feel welcomed into the family. That is such a refreshing change of pace. The stuff that Lisa and the creature do is just absolutely insane and sometimes satisfying, honestly. The ending of the film will leave you absolutely shocked in a good way. My only major issue with the film, though, is I feel like the third act was a little rushed. I would have liked to have seen more of the town reacting to and learning about what Lisa and the creature did and coming to terms with it, but the stuff we do get is good enough. Definitely check this one out whenever you get the chance.
Is that a challenge?
Challengers was one of the more unique films from this year. Some of you might be shocked that it's not much higher on the list. It almost was, though. There's a lot to really like about this movie. Most of it comes down to the acting. Zendaya Coleman is great as always, and it's really impressive how far she's come since her days on the Disney Channel. But I really gotta give my praise to Mike Feist. I was blown away by his performance in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story remake that came out a few years ago, and was hoping to see more of him in other movies. Thankfully, I got my wish. The relationship between the three main characters is very unique and almost heartbreaking. I love Patrick and Art's friendship, and was really sad to see it slowly start to fall apart once they meet Tashi. I really appreciate Tashi's loyalty to Art and refuses to betray him when Patrick asks her to be his new trainer. The scene where Tashi tears her ACL is so devastating because you can imagine what that would be like for any athlete since their career would practically be over. The story, or at least the concept of it, was interesting and unique to watch, and the direction from director Luca Guadagnino was very solid. However, there's one thing that really kept this from being a great movie for me. That would be the way that the story is told. So, a large majority of the story is told through a series of flashbacks. At first, the way it's presented is pretty simple and easy to follow, but as the movie goes on, they just get overwhelming. We'll have flashbacks, then a few flash forwards, and then another flashback before cutting back to the present day. Then we'd have flashbacks within flashbacks. It's like I was watching Inception in flashback form. I don't know what it was, but it felt like they got too caught up in their flashback storytelling device that they lost control of the ship. The only way I was able to tell which time period a scene took place in was by looking at the length of Tashi's hair. Aside from that, though, this was a really enjoyable film. Fun fact, a guy named Patrick Ott was actually an extra in one of the scenes in this movie. Patrick Ott is in my movie Max Revenge on the Run that's currently shooting right now as one of the main cast members, so I thought I'd share that.
Check it out, it's Bob Dylan.
Oh my God, I gotta go talk to him. He is the greatest living overrated singer.
The next film on the list is the most recently released one, that being A Complete Unknown. I'll be honest here, I didn't really know much about Bob Dylan going into this movie and didn't really hear much of his music growing up, but I was curious to see this film because it looked interesting. I really enjoyed it for the most part. The best part of the movie was Timothée Chalamet's performance as Bob Dylan. I've been a huge fan of Timothée Chalamet ever since I first saw him in the Little Women remake that came out back in 2019, so his performance did not disappoint. He really embodied Bob Dylan perfectly and even nailed the accent. Edward Norton was also really good as Pete Seeger. This is easily one of his best performances. Same with Monica Barbaro as Joan Baraz. I really loved her performance as Phoenix in Top Gun Maverick, so it was good to see her in another movie. The sets and the cinematography were amazing, as well as James Mangold's direction. I consider James Mangold to be one of the better modern directors working today, so his directing style worked flawlessly in this movie. It's not a perfect film, however. I felt like the script was all over the place. It's not messy or anything, but it didn't feel like a consistent A to Z story, if that makes any sense. I personally found the ending of the movie to be very abrupt. I didn't expect the Newport Folk Festival to be the climax. I thought we were going to see a little bit of Bob Dylan's later years in the 70s and 80s. It never occurred to me that this was only going to be about the early years in the film. I also found the film a little too long. I think at least 20 to 30 minutes could have been cut and gotten the film to a more appropriate length, but for what it's worth, I think it's a really enjoyable biopic.
I'm gonna turn into a vampire now! It's already happening!
I'm honestly surprised that this next movie made it so high on the list. I had a blast with Abigail. I was curious to see this movie because it was directed by Matt Bettatelli Oplin and Tyler Gillette. The two had previously directed 2019's Ready or Not. I made it clear that I wasn't a fan of that movie, but my issues with it came down to the script, really. I did like how the movie was shot and directed, so I was curious to see another movie from the duo. But yeah, I had a blast with this movie. Its premise is very similar to Ready or Not. However, most of the issues I had with Ready or Not weren't present in this film, so that made it easier to enjoy. The characters were all great, with each one having their own unique personality. The comedy was absolutely hysterical, the horror moments were thrilling, and I was invested all the way through. Dan Stevens' character Frank absolutely cracked me up. I loved how 90% of his lines revolved around him dropping the F-bomb. I really gotta tip my cap off to Alicia Wire for her performance as Abigail. She was able to play a seemingly innocent and scared little girl at the beginning, and a vicious, dangerous vampire that's capable of killing all the main characters in the second and third acts. That's not an easy task for any actor, let alone a child actor, and Weir just pulled it off perfectly. I can't even imagine what the casting process for this character was like. It must have been a nightmare finding a child actress that would be able to pull off both of those aspects of the character. I do think the movie kind of loses itself in the climax, however. What they did with Frank's character in the climax was something that felt so forced and came out of nowhere. I also think they went a little too over the top with blood. Like, this movie has more blood than any other horror movie I've seen combined. But aside from that, this was a really enjoyable and fun thrill ride that I'm looking forward to rewatching again in the future.
Actually, I was worried you'd say Beetlejuice 3 times. Because if you say Beetlejuice 3 times, then Beetlejuice, that was a close call.
Beetlejuice is another one of those rare legacy sequels that's actually amazing and made by people who love the original. It also feels like a return to form for Tim Burton. This might be his best movie since Alice in Wonderland. There's so many things to love about this movie. The best part of the movie is Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice. I think this is easily his best role, and you can tell how much he loves playing this character. I'm happy that Beetlejuice got way more screen time in this movie than he did in the original film. Every moment that he's on screen is pure gold. I also got excited whenever the movie got cut back to him. The returning cast is also pretty good as well. Catherine O'Hara steals the show as she always does whenever she's on screen. She is easily one of the funniest actresses ever, and I'll never get sick of her comedic outbursts. I also think that Winona Ryder did a pretty decent job with the material that was given to her. The humor in this movie is just as great as it was in the original film. The whole audience in the theater was laughing hard throughout the movie. The effects were top notch. I'm so glad that Tim Burton decided to continue using the practical effects that they did in the original film rather than relying on CGI. Despite those praises, I do have a few minor issues with the movie. The biggest issue is how rushed the third act is. Like, most of the conflict that was set up in the second act gets resolved pretty quickly in a matter of seconds. Then we have the attempted wedding climax where Beetlejuice possesses everyone, and it's trying to be a reference to the Deo scene in the original film, but just nowhere near as funny. But for what it's worth, I still had a lot of fun with this movie and thought it was a worthy sequel. In my opinion, Bad Boys Ride or Die is the best Bad Boys movie. I really enjoyed this movie. It's the exact kind of movie to see if you're looking for an old school summer blockbuster. Will Smith and Martin Lawrence have amazing chemistry like they always do. The action scenes are a blast, and the humor is just gold. Seriously, Martin Lawrence had the whole theater bursting out laughing at several points during the movie. My only complaint is that I felt like the plot and the villain were a little too predictable, but I can let that pass because it's still a very fun and entertaining film. Also, that Michael Bay cameo was awesome. That's all I have to say, really. It's just a fun and enjoyable, entertaining movie that I look forward to rewatching again.
It's a twister! It's a twister!
I had no idea what to expect going into Twisters. I really enjoyed the original Twister film from 1996 and was very apprehensive about a new standalone sequel. Surprisingly, I actually enjoyed this movie more than the original. There's a lot to love about this movie. The visuals look absolutely breathtaking. I was also on the edge of my seat a lot during the movie. Most of the characters were great and likable as well. Glenn Powell's performance was awesome as well. Seriously, the guy's been on a roll ever since Top Gun Maverick came out a couple of years ago. I would honestly be down for a sequel to this movie with the three main leads returning if they ever decide to do that, because I'd totally love to see more of these characters and their allies. I really don't have much else to say other than the fact that this was a really enjoyable and entertaining film.
We are Pentatonics
from Arlington, Texas.
Some of you might be surprised by the next entry on the list, but Meet Me Next Christmas was one of the biggest surprises I got from any movie this year. My mom and I are huge Pentatonics fans, and we make it a tradition to go to their Christmas concert every year. We decided to check this new film out in preparation because the premise revolves around a woman trying to get tickets to a sold-out Pentatonics concert on Christmas Eve. Members of the group also make appearances in the film as supporting characters. We both honestly expected this movie to be on the same level as those Hallmark Christmas movies, but with the Pentatonics members as supporting characters, maybe as a marketing push. But they actually put a lot of thought and effort into the script for this movie. This is a romantic and feel-good movie that leaves you with a smile on your face once the end credits roll. Yeah, the plot is pretty predictable and all, but sometimes being predictable isn't always a bad thing. I'm definitely adding this to my list of films that I'll be watching every holiday season. Definitely check it out next year, especially if you're a huge Pentatonics fan like me.
Ugly Sonic, that's the spirit.
And they'll like me for who I am. Not like last time when the internet got one look at my human teeth and burned the place down.
Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was an absolute blast and easily the best movie of the Sonic film trilogy. The series has really come a long way since the release of that infamous first teaser trailer with the ugly Sonic design. I'm going to get into some spoilers here, so please skip ahead if you haven't seen the film yet. Shadow was an amazing character. Keanu Reeves was literally the perfect actor for this role. His voice just perfectly suits the character, and he's able to really sell the trauma that Shadow is very much still dealing with the aftermath of. His backstory about his friendship with Maria was so heartbreaking, especially when we see what ended up happening to her. Jim Carrey still absolutely nails it as Dr. Robotnik, just like he did in the first two films. I think he's at his best in this movie. You can tell that he's just having an absolute blast playing this character and just goes all out on it. For this movie, he has a dual role as he also plays Professor Gerald Robotnik, Ivo's grandfather. This actually leads to one of the funniest fourth wall breaks that I've seen in any movie. But yeah, Ivo and Gerald's relationship was one of the biggest highlights of the film. The dance number that they do while surrounded by all those lasers is probably my favorite scene in the film, and I could totally see loads of memes about it happening. The relationship between Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles was the heart of the film, and I loved it. You could see how much they've grown and cared about each other as siblings, and it feels so real and relatable. The effects, chase scenes, and action scenes were amazing. They look even better than the ones we got in the first two films. I was on the edge of my seat numerous times. It was a lot of fun to see. Then we have the mid-credits scene. My God, the theater applauded when you-know-who revealed themselves at the end. It makes me even more excited for the fourth movie coming out in 2027. But yeah, a really fun film and easily the best Sonic movie.
His name is Arthur.
Arthur.
I was pleasantly surprised by Arthur the King. My mom and I decided to go see this movie because it looked interesting from the trailer, and she's also a huge fan of Mark Wahlberg. Man, this movie was fantastic. Who would have thought that a movie about a dog and a marathon race would have me on the edge of my seat more than most action and horror films have? Seriously, so many times I was worried, that this dog was just going to collapse and die, or like something was going to happen to Mark Wahlberg's character and his team while they were trying to complete the race. Was just, I literally was just like, just begging, oh my God, please make sure that this has a happy ending. And thankfully, that's what we got. I definitely recommend checking out this film if you haven't, because I guarantee that your eyes will be glued to the screen all the way through, especially when you consider the fact that this is actually based on a true story about this dog that actually, followed this marathon race that was going, thousands of miles around a country. That is just absolutely insane. But yeah, please check this movie out whenever you get the chance.
All right, now we're halfway through the list, and I want to thank today's sponsor. Yes, this video actually has a sponsor. This video is sponsored by The Crooked Shadows. It is a short film that was written, directed, and stars my good friend Peyton Lewis, who he is a good friend of mine from college. He actually co-wrote Max Revenge on the Run with me. He also has a small role in the film. And this is a short film. It's a gritty short film that is going to be released on January 5th, 2025. And on YouTube, you will find both the teaser trailer and the official trailer. Both links will be down below for you to view. They are just absolutely insane trailers. I think this is a short film you'll all want to see. So thank you, Crooked Shadows, for sponsoring the video. Also, the fundraiser for Max Revenge on the Run is still up and running. we are going to resume shooting on the movie next week, and we could use the additional funding to help us really properly finish the film. So if you could, please leave a donation. The link to the fundraiser will also be included down below. All right, now let's get back to the ranking.
Stop!
The very first movie of 2024 that I ever saw was The Beekeeper. After seeing it on its opening weekend, I had a hunch that it would end up in my top 10 favorite movies of the year. I ended up being correct. This was easily the most fun I had watching out of any movie that was released this year. It's an absolutely batshit insane roller coaster that'll most likely leave you with a smile on your face. As someone who's fallen for one of those internet phishing scams once, seeing Jason Statham's character blowing up the call center and destroying everything was beyond satisfying. I really love how unpredictable this movie is. Whenever you think you're able to predict what's going to happen in the next scene, the exact opposite ends up happening. Seriously, I never thought that an action movie could be this fun and satisfying. This was such a great movie to begin the year and helped me get out of my post-Christmas depression. Please check this movie out whenever you get the chance. I guarantee that you will not be disappointed at all. It is an absolutely batshit insane wild ride.
It's Saturday Night Live!
One movie that I never expected to make the top 10 was Saturday Night. I figured that this would be an enjoyable movie, but I didn't expect it to be top 10 good. I've been a huge fan of SNL for years, and let me tell you something, that this movie did not disappoint at all. This might be director Jason Reitman's best movie in my opinion. The casting director for this movie deserves a raise because everyone in this movie was perfectly casted. Gabriel LaBelle was great as Lorne Michaels. I'm glad that he's getting more roles after his amazing breakout performance in The Fabelmans a couple years ago. Corey Michael Smith was also great as this young version of Chevy Chase. If they ever decide to do a biography movie about Chevy Chase, they should use this guy again because literally he just nails the looks and the personality perfectly. The casting that impressed me the most was Matt Wood's performance as John Belushi. He literally embodied the man from the looks to the voice and to the behavior. It got to a point where for a very brief moment I literally thought they had brought John Belushi back from the dead or something. Fantastic casting. I don't know what to say. This is just a very interesting movie. If you're a huge SNL fan, I'll definitely check this movie. I think you'll have a really good time with it.
Now I wish I just stayed home and finished my remake of Inside Out.
I think we all knew that Inside Out 2 was going to end up on this list. I was very impressed by this sequel considering that I wasn't really a diehard fan of the first Inside Out. I personally had a lot of issues with the first movie, though I still really enjoyed it to some degree. Thankfully, the issues that I had aren't present in this sequel. There's so much to love about this movie. Seeing Riley starting to mature and becoming a real teenager was definitely an interesting thing to watch. Seeing her be conflicted by whether or not she wants to be with the cool girls or her actual friends is a situation I think every single one of us can relate to. I did like how we got to see a lot more of Riley and the human world elements in this movie compared to the amount of screen time that they had in the first film. It was also great that we got a lot more of anger, disgust, and fear. Don't get me wrong, they had loads of screen time in the first film, but I feel like the story was really focused on joy and sadness, so it was great to see them have a lot more moments to shine in this movie. There's also a lot of funny moments in this movie that actually made me laugh a lot. I love how the character of Pouchy is clearly a parody of Toodles from Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. That part made a lot of people in the theater laugh. The animation in this movie is absolutely beautiful as always from Pixar, but I think it's really improved a lot since the first movie. There's a lot more detail to the character designs, their outfits, and the memory balls compared to how they look in the first film. It's not quite as detailed as the animation in Toy Story 4, but it still looks amazing and real. Overall, this movie was a pleasant surprise, and I'm so glad that I enjoyed it more than the first movie.
When I wanted to see Stomp and you wanted to see Wicked, what did we see? We saw Wicked.
I was blown away by Wicked. I'm going to be honest here. I've actually never seen the Broadway show. Can you believe that? I'm not much of a musical theater guy, but I was curious to check this movie out, and my mom also really wanted to see it. Yeah, I go to the movies a lot with my mom, if there's a movie that I think looks interesting, that she thinks looks interesting. I love this movie. Everything from the story, the musical numbers, the performances, the sets, the cinematography, the visuals, and the score, all handled perfectly. Let me tell you something. I'm going to be furious if neither Cynthia Erivo or Ariana Grande get Oscar nominations for next year's Oscars. Their performances in this movie were two of the best performances that I've seen from any movie that came out this year. Director John M. Chu deserves more credit. I honestly think that he should direct every movie musical that comes out now. This movie and In the Heights show that he was born to direct movie musicals. But yeah, please check this movie out if you haven't yet. I'm looking forward to checking out part 2 when it comes out next year as well, to see how the story of Wicked concludes.
Squidward! The robots are running the Navy!
Not the Navy!
Another movie that I didn't expect to make the top 10 was Transformers 1. I'd never been a fan of Transformers at any point in my life. They've just never been my cup of tea. That's why I never saw any of the Michael Bay Transformers movies. However, I was curious to see Transformers 1 because it looked somewhat interesting from the trailers. I'd actually planned to see this in theaters back in September. However, I never ended up getting around to it. But now I finally saw it. I had a blast with this movie. The animation was absolutely beautiful, the characters were charming and likable, the voice cast was excellent, and I liked how there were no humans in the film, and that was just about the Transformers themselves. That was a refreshing change of pace. It was also sad to see Orion and D16's friendship fall apart and have them become enemies because their friendship seemed so genuine. I'm really disappointed that this movie did so badly at the box office and that there's currently zero plans to do a sequel because I would have loved to have seen more of these characters and this iteration of their world. But, it's good to see Josh Cooley, directing another great animated film after Toy Story 4, so there's that. But yeah, please check this movie out if you haven't. Even if you're not a fan of Transformers, I think you'd still really enjoy this movie.
You guys are lucky you didn't have a civil war or something over that.
Civil War is another example of why A24 has become one of my favorite studios in recent years. I really loved this movie. It wastes absolutely no time in getting the audience invested. The four main characters were all likable and interesting. The war scenes were great and kept me on the edge of my seat the whole way through, and it shows what a photographer's perspective of capturing war footage is like. The way that the four main characters react to the situations is very realistic, because it's exactly how anyone in their situation would react. That cameo by Jesse Plemons was absolutely brutal, and it makes me wish that there was an Oscar category for Best Cameo. The climax was so investing and interesting to watch. The film has perfect pacing. At no point was I ever bored during the film. The ending of the movie took me by surprise. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's something that I totally didn't see coming. Please check this movie out whenever you get the chance. It is fantastic, and another masterpiece by A24.
Behold! The head of your precious queen, Furiosa!
Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is probably the best prequel and spin-off that I've ever seen. Seriously, these Mad Max movies can pull off almost anything. I still can't figure out why this movie bombed so horribly at the box office. Were people just not that interested in seeing the film or something? Sure, it's obvious that it was never going to top the phenomenal Mad Max Fury Road, but there's still so much to love about this movie. Anya Taylor-Joy was spot-on perfect casting for this young version of Furiosa. She embodied the character exactly like how Charlize Theron played her. Honestly, I never would have guessed this was a different actress because of how much Anya played the character exactly like how Charlize did. Dementis was a great villain as well. His relationship with Furiosa was really interesting to watch. I gotta give loads of praise to Chris Hemsworth. His performance as the character was phenomenal. It felt like his apology letter for Thor Love and Thunder. The action and chase scenes were unsurprisingly amazing and fun to watch. Then again, because, this is George Miller after all. They're obviously not as great as the ones in Fury Road, but they're still amazing. The pacing and the way that the story is told is great. I was never bored at all throughout the entire film either. I was immediately invested from the opening scene of young Furiosa picking off a peach from a tree all the way to the end credits. It's great how it comes full circle by having the movie end where Mad Max Fury Road begins by having Furiosa rescue the 5 wives. We even get a brief cameo from Max. If you missed out on seeing this in theaters, well, first off, shame on you. You missed out on a great experience. Secondly, please check it out at your earliest opportunity. I think you'll have a blast with Furiosa.
Tell you, this is the most unprofessional film set since they cast Timothée Chalamet in Dune.
We all knew that this was going to be towards the top of the list. Dune Part 2 is a fucking masterpiece and probably one of the best science fiction movies ever made. You could tell that this movie, as well as the first movie, was director Denis Villeneuve's passion project that he'd been planning to make ever since he was a teenager. Seeing this on opening night in a sold-out IMAX theater was one of my favorite movie experiences this year. One of the textbook examples of why movie theaters should still exist. There's so much that I could praise about this movie that I don't know where to start. The cinematography can't even be described. Not only will it be nominated at next year's Oscar, but it'll also win the award. This is one of the most beautiful looking movies that I've ever seen in my life. Greg Fraser should already start preparing his awards speech. Honestly, I think this movie will win every single category at the Oscars. Every single shot in this film looks like something you could take a picture of and hang up in your room. Honestly, the cinematography alone is what made this worth seeing on the big screen. The action scenes were a blast to watch. That opening scene with the heavy troopers in the desert immediately had me hooked and invested in the film all the way through. Those scenes of Paul riding the sandworm were amazing. Same with the final battle on Arrakis. The rest of the cast also gave great performances as well. But one performance in the film that really stands out is Austin Butler as Fade Rotha. He is so menacing and badass in the role. The sequence where he's properly introduced in the tournament is easily one of my top 3 favorite scenes in the film. You immediately realize how vicious and dangerous that the guy is. I'm a little disappointed that he really wasn't in the movie too much because he steals the show in every scene he's in. The knife fight between him and Paul had me on the edge of my seat. I seriously thought he was going to slaughter Paul. The ending was very, very interesting and a bold choice. It's somewhat an ending for this particular story in terms of the first book, but it also perfectly sets up the story for the second book, Dune Messiah. I can't wait for whenever that movie gets made. But yeah, this movie is a masterpiece and one of the greatest science fiction films ever. I can't give this movie any higher praise. Yet, we still have 2 more films left on the list to go.
Attention, everyone! Run for your lives! Robots have taken over the world! Our world!
The Wild Robot, in my opinion, is not just the best animated movie of 2024, but I consider it to be the best DreamWorks animated movie ever made. Seriously, this movie is a masterpiece. Writer and director Chris Sanders shows that he's still got it and further proves why he's one of the best directors working in the animation industry today. This feels like a classic Disney animated film that could have been made during the Disney Renaissance. The animation is absolutely beautiful. It really feels like a blend of 2D and 3D animation. The story is also amazing. It feels like something out of a classic Disney film as well. I really gotta respect how, despite being a family movie, it does not hold back. It shows you how brutal nature can be. That helped keep me on the edge of my seat during the whole film. The characters are all amazing. Ross is such a great protagonist. Sure, she's a robot and can't really express emotions on her face, but Lupita Nyong'o, please forgive me if I mispronounce that, amazing vocal performance really sells how much she's growing and developing as her own person, not as a robot, as the film goes on. Seeing her try to be a mother to Bright Bill and raising him to be like other birds was so wholesome and bittersweet. I love the friendship she forms with Fink. I was worried that, he was going to end up being some kind of antagonist or something, but I'm glad that didn't happen, and he actually eventually grew to really care about Roz and everyone else. Also, I honestly did not know that was Pedro Pascal doing his voice until, I saw the credits. That was a shock. That's all I'm going to say for right now, because I want you all to go see this movie, because you will all love it, and it might even have tears in your eyes once the end credits roll. But here's a tip of advice. If you're currently on good terms with your mother and have zero drama going on with her in your life, watch this movie with her. Chances are that this will be a great bonding experience and make you appreciate everything that your mother did to raise you.
Hey, Hugh, you want to play Wolverine one more time?
Yeah, sure, Ryan.
I think we all guessed what number 1 was going to be. Deadpool and Wolverine is a hysterical and brilliant comedy and is easily the best MCU film since Spider-Man No Way Home. Seriously, this was the exact movie that the MCU needed to hopefully get it back on track in terms of quality. I'm going to get into spoilers, so please click away now if you haven't seen the film yet and don't want to be spoiled. I loved the relationship between Deadpool and Wolverine. This was easily the best part of the movie. Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman have this fantastic chemistry that worked so well. I would totally pay to see 5 more movies of these guys bantering. Wolverine's role in this movie is great. Now, this is basically a variant of Wolverine that's just played by Hugh Jackman. It's not the same Wolverine from the Fox X-Men films. So if you're worried that this movie will undo Wolverine's amazing send-off in Logan, rest assured that it won't. In the opening scene, it's made very clear that the Wolverine that died in Logan is still very much dead. But it was so cool to see Hugh Jackman finally wearing the proper Wolverine outfit from the comics. Jackman's performance was also really great as well. The humor was another major highlight. I laughed at so many moments in this movie that I couldn't keep track of how many times that I laughed. The fourth wall-breaking moments were easily a major highlight. I loved how Deadpool and the characters outright comment on how the MCU has been in a slump ever since Avengers Endgame, and how the multiverse attempts just haven't been going well. I'm honestly surprised that Kevin Feige allowed those jokes. The action scenes were also a blast to watch. Sean Levy's directing style really works for this movie. Visually, they all looked amazing, but they were also all really choreographed really well. The fight between Deadpool and Wolverine in the junkyard area, aka the Void, where you could see that torn down 20th Century Fox logo, was a fantastic scene. The scene of them having to fight all the other Deadpool variants was another awesome and fun scene to watch. All the cameos blew me away. I won't talk about them here because we'd be here all day, but my jaw dropped so many times and just thinking, oh my god, I can't believe they got this character and that character. And I liked how, though, even though this is set in the MCU, it also felt like more like a send-off to the Fox universe characters and as the company of 20th Century Fox as a whole. You know, once Disney bought Fox, I was just thought they were just going to abandon this universe, but to see it get a proper send-off was really wholesome. But yeah, this is a really great movie and definitely the film that the MCU needed right now. I consider it to be the best movie of 2024, and I would honestly call it one of the best MCU films ever made.
There you go. That is my top 20 favorite movies of 2024. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you all had a very good. I hope you all stay safe and you know, just not go out driving or if you do go out driving, just be careful for drunk drivers. Yeah, but yeah, I hope you all stay tuned for my next video, which will be in 2025.